Okay, welcome everybody to Perfecting Workflows Tool Development to Empower Designers. Hi, I'm Linda, the CEO and game designer of The Good Evil. We're an indie game studio based in Cologne, Germany. And I'd like to share with you today a series of best practices for designing your own framework, especially to empower designers and small teams. So here are the three main things that I'd like you to learn from the experience building your own system that we had when we built our own system, which is called the Evil system. So first, how we designed the system to be flexible and maintainable, even for like a small indie team that enables an efficient workflow and thus a better teamwork for everybody on the team. And at last, the design considerations and implementations we took to create a system that is independent of specific game mechanics, but that supports content-heavy games. But before I go into details, a bit about us, so you can relate to the decisions we took. So we are The Good Evil. We create games to make the world a better place. We develop educational games for everybody, from 3-year-old kids up until your grandparents. So we started out in 2013. We were 3 people, 2 game designers, 1 programmer. And we learned that time is the greatest asset that we have. So we embraced a good workflow. We started building games for mobile and web. And our business model was always that we created our own games. We did contract work for clients as well as consulting. So now, 6 years later, we are 6+ people because we're looking at the moment for more people. And we as well now do games not only for mobile, but as well for console and desktop. And our business model remains the same because it proved kind of sustainable. So this is a few of our clients, and this is a few of the projects we worked on. But yeah, before I started, still, why did we decide to build our own framework, and why didn't we use a tool that somebody else maybe developed before? Yeah, and I can say, well, we tried it. So the first game we developed was Squirrel and Bear, an adventure game for kids 3 to 9 years old to learn English. The game design document was already done, including the educational concepts, as it was part of a master thesis, and we needed a workflow and a tool pipeline to allow us to build this game for mobile. The game includes 5 hours of gameplay and 22 levels and 5 game worlds. Within a team of 3 people, we kind of needed something that helped us build that. So the tool pipeline that we developed was kind of made out of various open source tools. And as the game designer, I loved the solid workflow that we had, the naming conventions, straight access to code and logic, and that I could script the gameplay. What I didn't like about it was that it's kind of a tedious setup. We used 4 different level editors, or 4 different editors like level that enhanced level design, physics, texture packing, and scripting. And you can already see what's obvious in this workflow as the power and the responsibility that the designer had in the process, and that it has had already a very transparent access to the logic part due to our team setup. So we went on, and after shipping Squirrel and Bear, we did a few other games, and most of them differed from what I would say standard mechanics due to the target audience and the nature of that we always use educational content. So the games usually are a little bit different than other games. So we did games for clients, usually smaller projects, so that as well increased the need for us to do something or to create something where we can quickly create multiple projects in a short amount of time. Most of the games that we did were story-based or dialogue-based, or had a lot of dialogue and a lot of content. And we did games with various mechanics. So for those projects, we switched to Unity because they recently added 2D support, and we wanted a more supported and a more future-proof platform than the one that we had before. And thus, we tried a lot of third-party tools, but in the process, we encountered various problems. So most tools were designed for beginners, which is like super fine, but some of them didn't really scale well. They didn't have like a unified file management, especially if you use multiple tools. And it was kind of as well a tedious setup when it came to like big content. Other problems were, as I already said, that we usually don't use some kind of that standard mechanics, and we never were 100% matched to the design decisions that were taken into the tools. And we kind of didn't follow the same design philosophy that the tool designers put at the base. Because of the client games, we kind of were dependent on support, or as well on support in terms of that the tool is supported beyond the first production and before the first shipping of the game, which was kind of hard sometimes. And the other problem that we had, that if you use a lot of assets, for example, then you have conflicts between tools. So maybe you can relate to this. So we asked ourselves, what can we do? Can we optimize our workflow? So what we did is a workflow analysis, basically. And I'll just quickly click through this. So we ask ourselves a couple of questions, kind of a customer journey with our own team, like where are we doing repetitive tasks? Can things be automated? What steals the creative time? Defining overlapping tasks between the departments. What applications are we using? What is working? And what are the team's most hated tasks? So based on all these design considerations, we took, based on all these assumptions, we made design considerations for the EVIL system. From the designer's perspectives and the product manager's perspective, product management perspective, we wanted to have it represent a full workflow, design, art, code, and QA. We wanted to have the power that we love to have at the game designer's part back into the system, so that the designer is a bit more independent of someone else, especially when it comes to setting things up when people are not around. So when you work remote or when you work at different times in the office where maybe someone from the code department is not accessible. And as I said before, as usually all of our games had a lot of dialogue. Dialogue handling was very important to us, including branching dialogues and localization, of course. From the coder's perspective, the design considerations were that, of course, they wanted a maintainable and independent framework. So we didn't want to have like all this kind of different assets scrambled into Unity. We just want to have like a solid working solution and a structure where we didn't rely on that somebody else like shut down the tool and then we can't like continue developing with this. Wanted it to be flexible for future features, mechanics, and iterations, so that we can easily update it once we change what we wanted to do. And of course, a unified file management, so like one place for everything, that you don't need to look where things are, that there's really one base, so that creating new variables or functions are without a hassle. So the most important thing that we as well lined down regarding our design considerations were that it had a read and writable logic, so that as well people who don't necessarily want to have or read the source code don't have to, not because they can't, just because of it's more efficient if they don't need to dig through certain functions. So to have it on a bit more abstract level. And that it's easy to understand and follow the logic of what's happening in the game, so that you don't need to like have coroutines linked into the third kind of script and like dig through everything. And we wanted, of course, to be that we could use it and that it's reusable in the future, so that we're independent of specific mechanics, so that it's kind of independent on a specific assumption that we made for one game. So the designers wanted to say, I can change everything on my own. And the coders wanted to say, I want one accessible place. And important was it like the love inside the whole team to say, okay, yeah, we want to reuse the system for the future and for future projects. So how did we do that? How did we implement the evil system? So it is a framework that sits up on Unity, and it consists of three main things. One is the content management, the second is visual scripting, and the third is additional utilities. Basically, we create a repository for the game and then add a submodule with the evil system in it. So from the tech part, the content management has it's a content model that saves entities as abstract entity contents, and those entities can receive string, integer, and bool variables. It can receive game objects on runtime, and it can receive different states, and depending on those states, use different behaviors. So you can have like a door open and closed, and depending on those states, play other animations or make something different. Entities can be added to categories as well, and the entities can manage scene representations. So for us, it's rooms, that's all the things that have characters inside, all the scenes that have characters inside, and it's close-ups, that's everything that doesn't have a character inside. And entities can manage UI elements. So this is this level of abstraction or generalization is the core of our system's functionality. So that's the content management. From designer's part, it's a bit more different. So I'll use a few of our games as examples to help you understand the system a bit better. So at first, I'll use an example from the game that we're currently developing, which is the successor or the second part of Squirrel and Bear Europe, which is a 2.5D adventure game for kids to explore the cultural diversity in Europe. It's gameplay driven, it's for multiple platforms, and it uses more or less sequential levels. Visual scripting, how does it look like and what does it do? Basically, it's a node editor that we've done with Unity editor scripting, and through that, it defines our game. We can define our game flow. So the game loop and everything from opening the game until finishing the game is inside this, or we can script in through visual scripting in these flow editor. The game flow follows one node after the other on runtime, as you can see, and the nodes follow a hierarchy of nested elements. That means that the lower level things have higher priority above the ones that are in the upper layer. So if you have a specific dialogue in a nested element, that will be played first, and if there's no dialogue, if you have for example a default idle dialogue, this is not in the nested bottom, but it's on the top area, and the top always gets called last. Then the game flow can as well call tasks and UI elements, and it reacts to game events and conditions, for example. So I'll show you a quick setup and a demo how this is working on in a project. So after the initial project creation, you can do two steps. So you can either start with the flow editor, or you can go into the scene editor. I'll, for this, in this way, start with a flow editor. So you have the game design document, and then, for example, you want to create a new flow element that allows you to find the bee. Then you can, we want to trigger a dialogue to talk to the bee, and want it only to be reached when Squirrel can reach it when it's on the same nav mesh. So we can create a few elements. Basically, you can see that different elements are created, and then inside the dialogue will be nested. And in the end, you can write the dialogue. Okay, so, and then in the end, it looks like this. And you can as well talk to the bee. We have as well a task that you need to set up to make it reachable. Oops. Which is a bit hard to read. So you will basically check, okay, is the bee reachable? Are they on the same nav mesh? And if not, then you can move the squirrel, or if it's the case, then you can move the squirrel to the respective context object. So that's, so this works. So this is kind of a very short example of a readable setup of the game's flow and its logic. And it works as well for other games, like for games that have, for example, a more mechanics-based workflow. We have another game where you can see that's as well only scripted in that it's as well only done with visual scripting, where you need to manage a restaurant and then everything is like calculated and math related. So you not necessarily need to have a dialogue-based game. So then we have the flow and the task editor. For the scene editor, I'll quickly show you an example of our project Serena Supergreen. So this is a point-and-click adventure, and for the point-and-click adventure, we have a 2D setup in Photoshop where we have different foldering or specific and special foldering that already helps us when creating the game. It's written in a specific way. So I'll enlarge it a bit so that you can always already define, okay, in this case, it's a pickup, like the sock is a pickup. It has an image attached to it. It has an inventory image, and it gets a mask, which is basically the makes the collider. And then we export it in Photoshop and re-import it or import it in Unity. And it basically creates the same setup that the scene has in Photoshop in Unity. It gets already through prefabs all of the necessary objects to make it like the sock a pickable object in Unity without that anybody else needs to touch anything. So it's really nice regarding the batch processing. And it's as well very handy that when you once set it up correctly, then it is working nicely on an automated level. So level setup through batch processing comes in very handy here. And last part of the system, there's like additional tools that we have. So we have more setup utilities, like creating the initial setup, having like import and export of CSV files that help us, for example, when we need game balancing sheets. We have various logs and debug helpers. And then there's additional stuff for dialogue, like importing and exporting, batch fetch UI elements. So for example, that you create an UI element and you like a button for a start menu and you write a text in it. And at the end of the game, we can use this to go through all of the scenes and then create one file out of it that we can as well use for localization. We can as well generate debug audio. That was very helpful to as well get a feeling of how long the text is, because some of our games are for an audience that can't read, so the spoken and the vocal audio is very important. We have like a modified word editor and have rich text and emoji support. And from the art pipeline, I already showed you, like the Photoshop importer. There's as well an Illustrator part that works similar. And we have like, a bit of batch 2D depth sorting and batch creating random levels. So everything in that sense like follows the structure, leave repetitive tasks for the machine. So the overall workflow of the Evil system now is that, of course, the coders take care of the system itself, that the artist can still create and use Photoshop or Illustrator, for example, use the export scripts, that it's like straight fitted goodly for importing it in Unity. And then we have the game designers that can take care of logic, or the coders as well, and have the QA work along with this, because they can as well read the logic and read the logic and maybe already find why certain things still occur or what's wrong. So what we love about the system is that it's flexible and maintainable. As I said, it has like one accessible place for everything. It's readable without source code knowledge, and especially that we have like easy object handling, we have variable saving, batch generation, game UI handling comes in very handy, and then that enables efficient workflow and teamwork, so that really this I can change everything on my own is kind of embraced through it, as the workload can as well be shifted throughout the game, throughout the team. And that everybody can work a bit more independent without somebody being present, especially when you're not working in the same place. And the tool development process itself made the workflow and the awareness of each individual role more present, which has as well helped us out in developing the team further. It's independent of specific game mechanics, so with the different projects we did, it kind of proved itself reusable for future projects, as well as reusable for different game mechanics without specific restrictions. And as a bonus, through the reduction of repetitive tasks and stable workflow guidelines, we make more room for creativity. Are there any junior tool developers in the room? Okay, so a few things that I helped us that maybe help you as well is, start use your tools early. It will break, it hurts, it takes time. And there's lots of iteration, of course, involved. As I said at the beginning, we worked like 4 years and continue to iterate on the system, and I would never say that it's done. But it's what as well helped us a lot is that we created a feature test project. So it's a specific scene that has every function that we want, for example, for a specific game in a short amount of time, that you can then load up and play whenever you make major changes to really find out, okay, what maybe went wrong, and to help you to be able to fix bugs more quickly. And then, of course, the analytics part, like analyze, review, and prioritize the tools, as well as good guidelines, a good Git repository or other version control, and of course, a good documentation, which is like always nice. So, thank you very much. I'm up for questions.
Hi. We're currently working on a visual scripting tool to make characters for our game. I'd like for you to talk a little about how to include the designers to get feedback from them during the development of the tools, and how you do the training for the new designers to get into the tool as well.
Yeah, I think that's like one limitation when you create a tool. The like onboarding of new people is always a challenge. That it helps when you do good documentation, and it helps when you like have somebody who maybe have not worked on the project. It could as well be an intern, and you let them like use your documentation and try to work with the system, because that's the easiest way how you can find out, okay, what's still not documented or unclear. So it's good to like get fresh eyes that have knowledge onto this, and to get the designers in the process. I think everybody on the team, at least with us, kind of wanted to have a system and wanted to get this, to have something to rely on. So everybody was like willing to check it and to give their feedback. And I think the main or the primary perspective should be like to ask them what the tool can do for them, because in the end it should like make their life easier. So I think in this way you might get them on board and ask them, okay, that's the tool I built for you. Is it like really a good way that you can work with it? We had a couple of situations where the coders were very happy because it was a very quick solution for them, but it kind of created a lot of work on the design part. So it's like always these getting back, iterating on it, and really rethinking what you did and if it really helped your case.
Thank you.
Welcome. Yep.
Hi there. Based on the one line you said there towards the end, saying that I can do everything, is that not, doesn't it maybe open the door to a team member to start working in isolation and stop collaborating with the team members if they feel that they really can do everything and start to isolate themselves? Did you have to cope with anything like that before?
Okay, so when I did understand correctly, the question is that as it's like so powerful that you can create it on your own, that you're afraid that somebody runs off with it and like kind of is doing it on alone, or that it just like shifts the work to somebody else?
No, I think in our case, you mostly collaborate as a team. But if you now see that you can, as an individual, start doing everything by yourself, then you're going to end up working in isolation, because there's no need to really sit with anyone else on the team to start discussing or solve problems and so forth.
Well, I mean, it's powerful and it's designed that everybody can have a look at it when there's a problem or when you want to check something and don't want to like bother anybody, or really in that case, when you work in like from a different place in a different time zone and you're not in the same office at the same time, so that you're still able to work. But I think from the way it's built, it really embraces each part, like the artists and the designers, everybody has the dedicated role within the system and within the pipeline. It just removes like the friction between when somebody hands off like the graphic to the game designer or the tech artist, that everybody can concentrate on what they're best at, and that you just take out the rest of the problems that you might get. So I think it's not a limitation to create something like this. At least it's not for us. Maybe when you have a bigger team, it might get problematic, but I don't have I don't know.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think.
Hi.
Yeah,
at what point did you decide that using or building in a visual scripting pipeline was worth it, as opposed to just requiring the designers to use a simple scripting language like Lua or Python?
Well, we tried this as well. Like we had really a couple of steps. We did try different tools with import and export. We did try other scripting languages, but in the end, when you just do scripting, you either need a very good check that the entities or the names, for example, when you want to call an animation, that it's always correct. And in the way we did it now, because it's linked to the system and linked to Unity, it updates. So it creates less problems when you change a name or change something. And yeah, it's like, I guess, working 3 years with various solutions and then all the time being frustrated as well because we couldn't reuse anything. Then we decided, okay, maybe it's a good step to start trying it. And we tried it for one project, and then we kind of kept working on it and evaluated if it's still worth it, and everybody liked it. Yeah, and I think there's no more questions. If you have other questions, I'm outside. You can catch me. Yeah, thank you very much.